You don't have any Stephen King?
You've got the shinin'.
You mean shiny.
Shh! Wanna get sued?
It's just your fate. You're that geeky Stephen King kid. There's one of you in every school.
Okay, that's him, that's Cujo, that's Cujo.
I was thinking along the lines of no TV and no beer make Homer something.
Oh, crazy.
Don't mind if I do!
Hello and welcome to Tower Junkies, presented by ObsessiveViewer.com. Tower Junkies is a podcast celebrating the work of Stephen King, usually hosted by two lifelong and constant readers. We do non-spoiler and spoiler reviews of King's published work and take a critical look at his film and television adaptations as well. We also discuss the latest King news and check in with each other on our ongoing King obsession. It's the podcast where all things serve the King. You can find more of our work at TowerJunkiesPod.com. You can also like the Facebook page at facebook.com/TowerJunkiesPod. And follow us on Twitter and every other level of social media at Tower Junkies Pod. And if you'd like to support what we do here, you can become a patron at patreon.com/ObsessiveViewer for a ridiculous amount of bonus content spread across all of ObsessiveViewer.com's various podcasts. And just as a little teaser, I am planning a super crazy, ambitious project for Patreon for the $2 level starting in January. So if all goes as planned, I'll have a weekly thing on Patreon for the $2 patrons. That is insane and going to drive me crazy. But yeah, check that out at patreon.com/obsessiveviewer. Okay. So I'm one of your hosts, Matt Hurt, and joining me today for a very special episode is the host of a podcast that is a wonderful exploration of King's work through a literary analysis lens and a deep dive into what makes him one of, if not the best storytellers of our time. It's a podcast that has personally enriched my reading of King and will surely do the same for you. Please give a warm welcome to the endlessly delightful host of the Year of Underrated Stephen King podcast, Kim C. Hi, Kim.
Hi, how's it going?
It's going well. It's going very well. Yeah, I'm excited to have you on the show. After you were so kind to have your show slum it with having me on it.
I had such a blast, and I'm back for part 2 to hang out with Matt and have more fun.
Yes. Oh, yeah. Thank you so much for being here. And yes, listeners, this is part 2 of this. So you are required to go check out The Year of Underrated Stephen King and check out that episode and then come back here so you're not lost in like plot threads and everything that were established in that episode. So please go check out Kim's podcast. So welcome to Tower Junkies. I'm
so excited.
I'm super excited too.
Thank you.
Yes. Oh yeah, you're very welcome, and I'm so glad that you're here. This is actually several. There are several like special elements to this episode because this is a different type of episode than we usually do on Tower Junkies, because usually it's just me and Tiny just awkwardly talking about our love of Stephen King. And it's funny.
And Pizza Roll.
And Pizza Roll. Yes. Pizza Roll is an integral part of the project and the podcasts and everything. She is my editor. She's my, I tweeted, because in this episode, we're going to be talking about LT's theory of pets and All That You Love Will Be Carried Away, both from the Everything's Eventual short story collection. And that's one of the reasons why this is a special episode, because we don't really have guests on the show, but I want to branch out and get more guests in the Stephen King, specifically the Stephen King podcaster community. And so you're kind of the first of this kind of quartet type of episode where I'm going to have other Stephen King podcasters, hopefully down the road, on the show. So yeah, you're breaking ground on a new endeavor for Tower Junkies.
Oh, I'm so excited. Like, I have such a huge smile right now, like a crazy crazy wide grin because this place rules. I love Tower Junkies. I'm a huge fan. And so to be with Matt yet again on a brand new endeavor is too much for my little bunny heart. I'm excited.
Nice. Well, yes, I'm super excited to have you here as well. So, there was something I was going to say, but I forgot. So, oh well. But yeah, so this is exciting for those reasons and everything. So, Kim, for those of us who don't know about the year of underrated Stephen King, which everyone listening should, because I've been very I reference it all the time. And that's what I was going to say. I tweeted today that I tweeted I will not derail the podcast discussion of LT's theory of pets by bringing up by telling stories about my cat. I will not derail the podcast with this.
I will honor that code. I'll leave my 2 babies out of it as well, but maybe we can have a little slice at the end to honor our own fur babies.
Oh, make no mistake. We are going to be talking about our pets throughout this episode. I am not going to adhere to my own rule. But yeah, so before we get into the actual short stories and everything, like I said, we're going to be doing LT's theory of pets, and all that you love will be carried away. And that's kind of the idea behind what I'm hoping will be a series of episodes, is that we will basically have guests on who will talk about specific short fiction from King. So probably 2 short stories or 1 novella, however it shakes out. So I'm super excited for you to have picked these 2 just excellent stories. I'm super excited to chat with you about them.
Oh my God, they're so badass. I'm so glad they were on your list, and I felt so honored to snatch them up because these are phenomenal, and I can't wait to talk about them and nerd out with your listeners.
Nice. Same here. But first, we have business to attend to. We have to talk about the year of underrated Stephen King and how you got started and like how you found King, all the good stuff. So I don't know where I'm going to direct my first question because I am so much less prepared than you were for my episode of your show.
No worries. As a teacher, I'm kind of forced.
Sure.
Preparation is just there all the time. So no worries.
And I think that really comes through with your show, because it's so like we were talking before recording, I have my own 1-person podcast, and like it's a lot. Like it's a lot of work and everything, and it's just, I mean, it really shows through in your show. So yeah. So I love the show so much.
Oh, thank you, Matt.
Yep. So how did you get started? Like, I know that your first like reading of King was the novella 1922, right?
Correct.
Yes.
Well done, sir.
Yes. So how did you, what I kind of find myself wanting to know is how did you get to the point where you chose that one, where you picked that one, and what's your, like, how'd you come to King as a reader and as a viewer even? Yeah.
Okay. Well, once upon a time, to put it succinctly, this will be a good little tale. So I'm a child of the 80s, and my father was a King fan, and he had a lot of King books all over our house, so I kind of grew up seeing them. But strangely enough, I wasn't interested in horror. I think I was more interested in romance.
Okay.
So yeah, I was one of those gals who was like, I want to read about people doing it rather than than horror. So after, the bumpy road of undergrad, I knew I wanted to get my MFA for grad school. And so once you start a grad program, it's all incredibly dense literary fiction, classic authors, American lit, Brit lit, plays. You're just like, oh my God.
Wow.
But that's like the only diet you have. And so it's kind of all you know, and you get a little snobby, and you kind of turn your nose up a little bit. Not everybody, but some of us.
Sure.
some of us who had, way too many theory classes and too much wine, you just turn your nose up at popular authors and popular fiction, even though I'd never read King. So I had actually bought Full Dark No Stars as a present for my dad because who doesn't love a King book at Christmas, right?
Absolutely.
It's the best Christmas present ever. And so my dad, he always loved Stephen King's short stories. He loves them.
Nice.
And he always taught me to appreciate short fiction. And so I bought Full Dark No Stars for my father as a Christmas present. Probably the year it was released, around 2012, 2013, I think. Okay. And so it was in his office. He had read it. He had liked it. And I was just randomly up there. I think waiting on, I think it was my mom. We were going to go to lunch. And I was fresh from grad school. I had the brain scramblies of what do I do now without school? I don't want to grow up. I don't want to leave academia. I don't want to be a real boy. Right. And so I wanted something to read, but I was like, ugh, Stephen King, boo. Because I was like, I don't want to read a popular author, just like a snob, just like a total snob. And then I was like, well, this cover's cool. Let's do it. And so I grabbed it. And 1922, of course, opens that novella collection. And within the first, I want to say 3 to 4 pages, I think what came out of my mouth, pardon the expletive, was holy shit. Oh my God. Who is this man? Just the captivating, enthralling, powerful introduction of Wilmer and this farm and this spooky gothic vibe of the cornfield. And I was like, what the hell is going on? And I devoured it in 2 days. And then it just was a door flew open in my heart. And I went to my dad and I was like, Dad, did you know? Did you know he was this great? Did you know? And he kind of just looked at me and nodded silently. Yeah, nobody could tell you, though. You're Miss Grad School. And I was like, I'm a fool. I'm a fool. For shame.
Nice.
Why didn't anyone tell me? Why didn't anyone come up to me on the street and just shove this book in my face? So since 2013, that was after I finished Full Dark No Stars. I was like, oh my God, where do I even begin? Where do I even go? What do I do? And so I just decided to go for it and started my King journey. I think Pet Sematary was the next one, which, whoa. Yep. Yeah, it was rough. Yeah. I was like, oh God. And then I started to kind of get back on track a little bit to what I knew, which was short fiction. And so I started digesting some of the short story collections and hopscotching around until within the last couple of years, I was reading about 3 to 4 King books a year, love and life, and trying to preach this guy's message, right? I was trying to talk to all my grad school friends, and they would say, oh, what are you reading? And they would list some obscure author or some depressed alcoholic from the Iowa Writers Workshop. And I was like, but have you read Stephen King? Have you read this title? And they're like, Kim, are you serious right now? Stop. What's wrong with you? Stephen King, really? And I was like, you don't understand. And so then, thankfully we have all these amazing Stephen King podcasts out there to kind of nurture us and nourish our fandom and these novels that are amazing. And so I was enjoying a few and I was like, you know what? I'm really wishing that I could nerd out like I would in school about Stephen King, because I feel Stephen King doesn't get the academic treatment he needs because everyone marginalizes him and throws him in the bucket with genre fiction. And genre fiction doesn't have merit. It's just popcorn junk food for people to easily digest, and there's no nutrition to it. And I was like, what the hell? No. Am I in crazy world? I am no. And so a kind of idea was born where I was like, you know what? There's so much gold in this man's writing. He is objectively great. He is objectively great. He is one of the most rewarding storytellers I've ever plugged in with. I cannot be silent anymore. And so I was like, you know what? Let's just take a crack at it. Let's take all the gold that I've been amassing in my life with these underrated works, and let's do it. And so the Year of Underrated was born last year during COVID lockdown.
Yes.
Yeah. So it was just now or never. Walk the plank. Let's do it. And I've met a lot of amazing people like yourself who are so kind and generous and incredibly knowledgeable. And man, they have treasure troves of King stuff, and they love the stories just as much as I do, and it has been an absolute blast. So yeah. That's been the last 7 or 8 years, and and my journey of King. So there you go. That's that little cupcake for you.
That's awesome. And yeah, it's really it is such a great community of just fans of Stephen King. Like there are, I mean, just it is. I hesitate to say that he's a writer without, like, he's not like an edgy personality or anything. Like, you see Stephen King in like interviews and stuff, and like he's just this very, very pleasant man. And then his work is just, for me, it's like kind of it defines this kind of middle America working class person that he imbues into his stories so frequently and so greatly that, like, to dismiss him as like, oh, he's just a genre writer, he's just the horror guy is definitely inaccurate.
Oh my God, right? And it's just heartbreaking that, like, there are so many closed hearts and minds because he's been typecast as whereas we, the constant readers, have like read these amazing, like, life-changing stories, like The Body, like It, like some of these short fiction, like The Man in the Black Suit and 1922, and just these stories that'll be with us forever and have completely, like, you think about them to this day, and you haven't read it you've read it 6 years ago, like wild, crazy stuff. And it's like, okay, how is it that he can just be dismissed by the literary community? Yeah. And I'm like, no, I will preach this message to anyone who will listen, and I don't care if I'm stoned in the street. This is the hill I will die on.
Nice.
I will die preaching the perfection of Stephen King and his incredible, masterful hand at fiction, and that we should be studying him in schools, and we should be studying him at the graduate level, definitely the undergraduate level. And that's what I guess my ultimate goal is like, I want more academics out there nerding out to King just like me and just like all of us.
Yes. Oh, that is the dream. It's something that I was talking to my friend Mike, who's I told you off mic. He is a sophomore high school teacher. He is a teacher who teaches sophomore English. He's not a sophomore teaching high school. Anyway,
bless him. That's 10th grade.
Yeah, and I mean, I have the utmost respect for him, because I mean, he's such a positive guy, and he has such a good heart that, I mean, I always just kind of, whenever he and I talk and we're able to do a podcast, it turns into just this love fest. Like, oh man, you're so great, and I'm glad your kids are doing well and everything. And then he begrudgingly compliments my cat, but He's not a fan of cats, I should say. But
Oh.
yeah. But anyway, I was asking him about his teaching and everything, and how the curriculum is laid out and all that. And then I just I very playfully said, oh, so you're not teaching any Stephen King, and knowing that it's, sophomores in a public high school in a pretty rural Indiana town. And he's like, no, but I would love to. And I've seen kids walking around, especially when it came out, he saw a lot of kids with a copy of it just walking around the halls, and he'd stop and talk to them about it and everything. So it's always good to have an educator preaching the word of King.
Right? Yeah.
Yes.
And I agree. And I've even thought about it. We could plug in so many different books into a curriculum, like The Long Walk, The Dead Zone. These are all novels that if we sliced and diced them correctly, we could teach some kids.
Oh yeah. So, speaking of slicing and dicing, that is a weird transition. Your show, you recently did what you dubbed the TK Edit, which I listened to that today, and it is, I not to put more stuff on your plate, but I kind of hope that you do more King Edit episodes like that, because for the listener, you read the Tommyknockers, which is
I survived the Tommyknockers, Matt. I survived it. I'm just kidding.
Exactly. Oh no, I am right there with you.
Yeah.
So we so you read it, you reviewed it, and then you edited it down into. This is kind of the power of this type of podcast, and especially your insight as well. That I was listening to your TK Edit episode, which is you kind of pitching how you would rework the Tommyknockers into a more coherent and,
Yes.
interesting story. And while I'm listening to you talk about it, I'm just maybe I should give the Tommyknockers another shot.
Totally. I'm so glad I read it, but dang, is that a mess of a book. My goodness, that is just but thank you, one, for listening, but also, yes, I think it's a good idea you've pitched. I think more edit episodes will be down the pipe, because it's such a cool thing to look at King and kind of, especially the ones that aren't aging as well, some of the older King novels that maybe aren't as woke as it should be in 2021. But it's something I do with my students about creative workshopping, and how do you fix something and make it better? How do you take something that's kind of messy, how do you clean it up? And it's a huge exercise that we do in fiction, and there's a lot of edits I'd like to do in King's work, specifically for whatever reason. I don't know how many more alien themed stuff King has out there, because I'm not quite finished with my journey, but it seems all the alien ones need some attention, need some editing. Tommyknockers, Under the Dome, pardon any cryptic spoilers. But I just think that what I've noticed is Mr. King doesn't really like to world build or give a lot of lore in some of his works, and the story suffers because of that. And so I think he needs to spend a little time in the stew pot and not go so fast with some of these larger concept books. So, but thank you for the great idea. I'm going to nurture that one, and I'm going to have some more editing episodes down the road. Nice.
And I totally expect royalties to be paid out to me, so I'll invoice you.
Please send me a bill, Matt.
Yeah. But in terms of him and alien stuff, I don't know where. According to your list, you have not read Dreamcatcher, right?
Have not.
Okay.
I want to, though. I'm intrigued. However, somebody said, I don't remember where I heard this from, but it's a little harsh. But they said because this was a post-accident King book, that it's a trash book. And so I'm intrigued to read it because of that. I think that might be a little harsh. But I also read that there's a thing called a shit weasel in it. And I'm like, excuse me, what? Excuse me, what?
Yep. Yeah, it is. It is such a bonkers, weird book. But and for Tower Junkies, Tiny and I have been conscripted to read and review it and watch the movie because brilliant person that I am, I decided to put a poll earlier in the year saying like, hey, we're gonna review one of these movies and books. Just vote on it. And like I had like in one of the polls I had Dreamcatcher and Cell and Firestarter, which I was kind of bummed didn't win on that one, but like they picked Needful Things and Dreamcatcher, and so eventually we're gonna have to do Dreamcatcher. But I had listened to the audiobook probably a year or two ago, and it was like soon after reading the Tommyknockers or surviving the Tommyknockers. And what I find interesting is that these two books kind of parallel each other in some interesting ways. And I don't know, this obviously isn't a spoiler for the book, but in terms of the writing of it, it's kind of interesting because the Tommyknockers obviously, like famously, was his kind of last book on cocaine, and he got clean. And so as a result, it's just completely all over the place and crazy. And it has to do with aliens. And then fast forward to 1999, he has his accident. He is bedridden in recovery, and he is just completely out of it on painkillers. And so he has this idea for this book, Dreamcatcher, which involves aliens. And he, from what I've read, he actually wrote it out in freehand because he couldn't sit up and type at his computer or anything.
Oh my gosh, I did not know that.
Yeah. So it's interesting because we have two books about aliens written by King at different levels of influence of external substances, and they're both pretty terrible books.
Interesting.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah. So it's yeah. I'm at some point this year. We're going to kind of dive into Dreamcatcher, but I'm not really looking forward to it. Hopefully I'll
do it with you. Safety in numbers. I'll do it with you.
Awesome.
So, yeah, just let me know when you start it. I'll get my copy. We'll start hacking through. We'll start macheteing through the jungle together.
That sounds like a plan. I'm going to hold you to that.
Because, please do. I've noticed that some of the harder King works or King works that I'm like not really feeling. For example, Misery. Yep. I am objectively terrified of some of King's more frightening works. I'm just... they're a lot for my little heart to get through. But if I collaborate with someone or someone's in like a group setting, I can never resist a group project, and I will always pull my weight.
Nice.
So I will suffer through even if I'm miserable. Even though I'm dying inside, I will.
Sure.
I will pull the plow for the group. So please hold me to it, and I'll make sure I get it done.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely. We're going to definitely have to organize that. And so you have done these kind of group things on with other podcasters as well. I haven't listened to their show, Jess and Kendra.
Yeah, they're super cute.
Yeah. What is their podcast called again? Palaver?
Unraveling Weird Lit.
There we go.
And so they are really fun gals, and they do Lovecraft. They do all kinds of weird stuff. And they have a really fun segment on their show called Damn It, Steven, which is like very funny about some of the moments. And we all have them where, he's really not very kind to an obese person in
Yes.
his work, or how he's not very nice. So there's a couple damn it, Steven moments that they share. But yeah,
Nice.
so they have helped me a lot stay on track. And thanks to them, I was able to make it through Rose Matter, which is a very difficult text to get through.
Right.
It is one that is a little harder on the ladies. It's like the book should be called Rose Matter, parentheses, misogyny overload.
Oh, yeah.
So it's a little bit challenging. However, very rewarding. Really glad I read it. And then I was scared to death, but I made it through Misery, and so glad I did. That is a masterful, absolute genius novel that is, it belongs on the top spot where it's frequently mentioned as like one of the most terrifying novels.
Oh,
all of that is true, but its brilliance is unparalleled. Like, I get it. I get why it's so celebrated. However, I'd rather die than read it again. So.
Yeah, it is very much a rough one. But it is so, I talked about it on your show, but with Misery, like I find myself reading it every maybe year or two while I work, and that has its own subconscious kind of thing to it itself. But also, I think it's because I just find so much stuff in like the subtext of that, like so many different reads of it. Like, I mean, Annie Wilkes' Cocaine, that's how he wrote it and everything. But I also view it as creativity and struggling with art and everything. And it's just so layered and amazing. It's I love it so much.
I hope that one day I'll be brave enough to give it a thorough second reading, but like I'm scared, man. I can't. What she does to Paul, I just need to heal from it. I need to heal a little more, and then I can look at it objectively again and hopefully see what you see. Because I did love the Scheherazade metaphor. I love the sort of shrinking into yourself until you're this little mouse of a speck of who you originally were in terms of an artist, and hating what you're famous for, but yet needing it to survive. It's incredible. There's so much there, but I'm too scared. So
I totally get it. So in terms of the stuff that you've read and everything, since you're kind of, well, I mean, this is maybe misleading because this is really just because of your podcast, but with you going through the underrated works of Stephen King specifically, are there any that just kind of either, let's see how to phrase this. Is there anything that you found that you weren't looking forward to that just completely just shattered your world in this kind of whole endeavor of going through underrated King works?
I love this question. Just to clarify, shattered my world in a good way
in a good way. Yeah.
So when I read Different Seasons, I was not prepared for my heart exploding during Rita Hayworth and the Shawshank Redemption.
Yes.
So Different Seasons was one I had no idea would be a roller coaster of emotions. And when I was reading Rita Hayworth, and of course I'd seen the film of Shawshank Redemption, but reading it is incredibly rich and very different, and I had a full-on like burst into tears, like a hard cathartic cry with that one. And it was one of those where I was just so grateful to King's writing, because he, I think in the episode where I talk about Rita Hayworth, I had like a synesthesia moment where if I closed my eyes and I was reading the text, the weight of it, like, this is such a heavy subject, these guys in prison, it's dark, it's bleak, but yet there's so much beauty, and I felt like I was carrying a brick of gold when I was reading that story, and I was like, this is so powerful, my heart can't take it. So there's a lot of tears. And then the roller coaster really gets gnarly when you transition to Apt Pupil or Summer of Corruption.
Yes.
And you go from like this highest high to like this bleak, desolate, depraved, disgusting, like so disturbing. And I was like, oh my God, this is rough.
Yes.
So Apt Pupil is definitely a short story I never want to read again, and I will only ever do it if academically forced, like if I have to for class. But that one was like, and then we transition to the body, and then the roller coaster goes up again, and you're just in heaven with these young boys and these friends and this preciousness and youth, and and then we go down again. With the breathing method.
Yes.
And so I think in different seasons, that was one. It was definitely, it's extraordinary in its polarization, but also in these incredibly larger than life narrative experiences, mostly with the body and Rita Hayworth. And then the films are like life changing, and then you have these like two giant like potholes, manholes that you just fall into the earth when you read them.
Yep.
Say different seasons just had me wrecked in good ways.
Yes.
But yeah, let me see. I know that there are more. Of course, I'm a huge fan of Duma Key. Huge fan of Joyland. One that I will actually has been really hard. I think I have some reader trauma, and I'm hoping to talk with more people about this one. Perhaps you can help, Matt H. But Bag of Bones. Bag of Bones has been one that a lot of people recommended, and I'm a huge fan of the novel Rebecca by Daphne du Maurier, and that's what King used as inspiration for Bag of Bones.
Oh, interesting.
So, so I was like, oh my God, this is going to be the best novel ever. And it has scarred me very deeply.
Oh, wow.
Just sort of like what happens in that novel, or the reasons why this ghost has haunted the Darkscore Lake. Like when you when the mystery is revealed, it was like a little too much. And so I'm kind of putting myself back together from Bag of Bones.
Sure.
Those have been the most sort of recent ones that come to mind, that have wrecked me. And then the one that everybody loves it, and I don't know if I do because it's too much, is The Long Walk, which is a Richard Bachman.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that one, Matt?
Well, I haven't read... I have not read any of his Bachman books, which is a huge, huge blind spot for me, and I'm bringing great shame to my constant reader status. But but it's something that in my head I'm like, okay, well, when we do like Richard Bachman, we have to do all of the Richard Bachman books and everything, because I'm just crazy with planning the podcast and everything. So I have heard such insanely good things about The Long Walk and how crazy it is that I've got to check it out.
Yeah, I would like to have a chat with you about it after.
Nice.
But ultimately, being somebody who kind of grew up studying prose and especially in the last few years for graduate school and teaching my students this, the short stories are really what gives wind beneath my wings regarding King's work. So pretty much when I read a Stephen King short story collection or a novella collection, those are where my bread and butter is. That's where my heart is, because that's where we really see his mastery, because he has so little time and so little pages he's allotted. And so it's like you're really seeing craftsmanship and genius in those, such as the two stories we're going to discuss today.
Yes.
So those are some of my favorites. So I always nerd out extra hard on the novella collections and the short story collections. Those are the ones where I see King's power the most.
Yes, I 100% agree. I have been going through the short story collections kind of at my leisure over the last couple of years. And I do this thing on Twitter where I do like these little Twitter threads where I'll put just my brief thoughts like immediately after reading or listening to a short story, and then I'll be obnoxious and add like a little GIF that has like very tangential relation to the story.
I do love those.
Nice, thank you.
But pretty spot on. They're actually they're pretty great.
It's insane how much time I spend just sitting there looking for GIFs that would be appropriate. So thank you. But it's something that I like. His short fiction is just so good. And spoiler for the kind of Patreon thing that I teased early in this episode, but that's going to be kind of the driving force of this insane project I have for next year. But that's next year. But yeah, his short fiction is just so great because he's so talented at creating character and to an extent like world building in a confined space. Like I think that he kind of thrives in the short form format specifically because like there's not enough time or room to really go full hog into this backstory and everything. So he can just establish something and then let it run through the course of the story. And it works so well across so many different stories. It's really, really incredible.
I couldn't agree more. And his technique is just so incredible to behold because he gives you a whole life, a whole world in such a few pages.
Yes.
Especially with character. And what he does so well is give us typically a senior citizen, and then they're able to flash back, or he's able to give us a whole town, a whole life, a marriage, children, death, the cycle and you're just wrecked and you care so deeply, and it's been 15 pages and you're like, how did this happen?
Yes. It's so it's so beautiful. And before we get to the stories, we're gonna get to LT's theory of pets first. But before we do that, there is. Have you come across? I know you haven't read Night Shift, but have you come across Maximum Overdrive?
I laugh because the only thing I know about it is like various clips I see of like some semi truck with like a goblin face.
Yep.
And I'm like, what is going on? So
yeah,
I haven't. I'm confusing that with like, is there a short story called Trucks or something? Okay.
Yeah.
So Maximum Overdrive is not Trucks, or it is Trucks?
It is. It's kind of interesting because Trucks is a short story from Night Shift, and then King in 1986 decided to direct Maximum Overdrive, which was based on or he adapted from Trucks. And then the movie did so poorly and was such a train wreck that he I think the anecdote is that whenever anyone asks him why he's never directed anything else, he's since he did Maximum Overdrive, and he'll say, well, did you see Maximum Overdrive? But also he was like, as I think he puts it, he says that he was coked out of his mind throughout it.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, and it's pretty rough. But then, interestingly enough, in I think 98 or 99, someone else readapted it for a TV movie that I don't think is very good, but I have to assume is better than Maximum Overdrive. But what's interesting about it is the story is another example of King really thriving in the short story format, because the adaptations really lean into the fact that it's about trucks that become sentient and want to kill humans. That's the plot of the story.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It's
We've got Transformers. It's not that hard of a sell.
Right.
We're good. We got the Decepticons. I'm on board.
Right. And it's something that, like, the premise alone really really lends itself to that B-movie, crazy, silly, coked out movie kind of adaptation. But when reading the story, and I'm not going to give anything away, and I hope that this isn't like a spoiler in and of itself or anything, but the technique he uses with writing it reads like he had this insane, crazy idea, and then wanted to. And again, this is total, just completely unfounded. I don't like. This is just me. I have nothing to corroborate this, but it reads like he had this insane idea and wanted to challenge himself to make it as maybe not as believable as he could throughout the run of it, but like to kind of plug in any plot holes that you can think of throughout it. So like he addresses so many different things throughout it that I'm like, oh, I wouldn't even have thought of that as something. And I don't know if I'm doing it justice, but it's a really interesting short story that I kind of think deserves better than the B-movie treatment that it's gotten twice now.
Well said. I will definitely keep it on my radar because I am all about exploring through the junk, perceived junk in quotes, I should say, because one man's trash is another man's treasure, always. And so there's always good stuff. And there's even good stuff in Tommyknockers. I just, wish we could fix it. So, but yeah, I will keep that in mind. And I'm glad you said that because I think that there is nothing but negative associations with it that it would probably hinder me from seeking it out, but now I will with more gusto.
Nice. Awesome. Well, I can't wait to hear your thoughts on it. So shall we get into the short stories that you picked for this episode?
Lead the way, good sir. Yes.
Awesome. Okay. So I think we're going to go chronologically from the original publication. So, and I don't think that really even needed to be addressed here. But anyway, first up is LT's Theory of Pets. And just as a background for the listener, LT's Theory of Pets is a short story in Everything's Eventual that was originally published in 1997 in a limited edition collection called 6 Stories. And Kim, I have a question for you about LT's Theory of Pets and Everything's Eventual as a whole. Did you listen to the audiobook or did you just read it conventionally?
I did both.
Nice.
Because that's my big thing that I encourage all readers to do. By all means, audiobooks on the go, love them, always plugged in with one. But when I read King, in order to fully activate my brain the way I like, I have a physical copy of the text, and I'm a little bit of a hardback snob, so I have the hardcover. Have my hardcover, I take off the dust cover so I don't mess it up.
I do the same thing.
Right? I don't want to get any schmutz on it. So, and then I have my headphones and I'll play the audiobook and I will read along because it is such a powerful reading experience. It's really immersive and it helps me remember and retain more of the story. So I, with Everything's Eventual, did both and love this collection. Love it, love it, love it.
It is such a strong, like, pretty much every short story collection is very strong. Like I have not come across one of his collections where I felt like, oh, this is low on my list of King books, because there's always something that just really grabs me in them, even if it's just 1 or 2 stories, which is never the case. It's most of them. But yeah. So with this story in particular, in the audiobook, it has the live reading, right?
It does, I believe.
Yes. And I am just so like tickled by it because I have so much respect for Stephen King as like he has this like innate ability to be down to earth and very personable, and like he introduces that live reading of it where I don't know if you remember, but he's like going on stage. It's at a live reading of it at Royal Festival Hall in London in 2001. And he starts it off by saying just like super casual stuff like, oh, I'm really glad that I'm here able to read my short story to you guys in a room full of people who are definitely going to die someday. And
he's so charming, like
so
effortlessly charming
Yeah.
and witty and funny.
So good. And then he goes on to say, and before I do this, I just want to ask you guys one question. I want you guys to think of one question while I'm reading this. Did I close the shower curtain or leave it open? Because if it's open, you should maybe get out of there.
One of my favorite this is kind of ties in really quick, but this is
Sure.
in the Bachman books when you get there. He does a wonderful little intro to the Bachman books.
Nice.
And this is early in his career when somebody asked him, like, aren't you going to get upset that you're just going to be typecast as a horror novelist? And he's like, I don't care what they call me as long as the check doesn't bounce. And, like, I just love that. Like, he just doesn't care. But he cares about the readers and the fans, and he's just charming and kind and wants to give people a fun experience, a memorable experience. And he just does that. At the end, he'll just like give you a little scare, and it's precious.
Oh, absolutely. That's a really great way to put it. And with LT's Theory of Pets, this is a story that we'll probably usually we do non-spoiler and spoiler, but I don't know, we'll kind of see where it takes us here. But
I'll do my very best.
Okay. But it takes us down a path. Like it is a very it's kind of a silly story, or it's a story that is kind of playing up this it's an overview of a pretty kind of turbulent marriage and in the waning days of a turbulent marriage, and it leads up to like this whole theory about pets and all that, and kind of the impetus of it is that one person in the marriage gifted a pet to another one, to their partner, but the partner's pet latched onto them and vice versa. And like all that's great, and then it just hits you with this just brutal punch at the end that's just
curveball,
yes, that like in the hands of any other writer I would have been like, okay, this was like, okay, he needed to hit the horror mark there, but with King it's like this is just incredible to me. So what did you think of LT's Theory of Pets?
Oh my gosh, I love the hell out of this thing. And let me kind of give you a few bullet points as to why. Firstly, it gets a post-it, which whenever a King story, a short story, is so good, it gets a little post-it note in there so I can go back to it and read it again. That's like my little favorite. And so this one got a post-it because, as you mentioned, this story is very lighthearted in tone. And it's very like charming and jaunty because we're talking about a dog and a cat and some shenanigans, and it's pretty light. What's also really cool about LT's Theory of Pets is this narrator that we have is a friend quoting LT.
Yes.
So it's like some random person who we don't know who works with LT at the meat packing plant. So these are like blue collar guys, not very wealthy, and he's saying my friend LT, and that's who is our narrator. And so it's kind of like, is this unreliable? I don't know, but it's kind of charming and I'm going to go with it. So it's talking about like this guy named LT, his wife left him, but it was because, he didn't like her dog and she didn't like his cat. And it seems really jaunty and simple. And then, like you said, the tone goes off a freaking cliff.
Yes.
And we're just like, what the hell? There's a sharp curve in the road, and the reader, like, it kind of makes you plummet a little bit because you weren't expecting to feel sort of shock and terror and like, it's macabre, it's very sinister, and it's mysterious. That's the thing is there's no resolution or sort of any sort of final note. It's like, and that's that. And you're like, what?
Yep.
So, yeah, this is such a masterful little tale in narration, the way that he chooses his narrator and how it's like hearsay, like it's like a hearsay story. And LT just kind of seems like a dim bulb, like,
Sure.
Didn't do enough to keep his wife happy, and he's got a cranky cat who I must share her name. The cat's name is Lucy, but the wife nicknames it Screw Lucy, which is hysterical and so cheeky. But yeah, so then we have, it's jaunty, it's fun. And then all of a sudden, and it really is all of a sudden, you're like, whoa. It starts to take a turn a little bit where all of a sudden LT is not really a dim bulb, but a broken-hearted, shattered guy.
Yes.
Who can't face reality of what may have potentially become of his wife.
Yes.
And that's all I'll say there. But it's like, I have never read that I can think of a short tale from King that started off a certain type of way, and I was bouncing along the happy little grass field, and then you plummet off a cliff. And that's exactly what this narrative experience feels like.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it kind of speaks to me in the way that I kind of have this theory that I stumbled through when I was on your show, but about how much importance King puts on just storytelling in general, like storytelling in universe, in the characters and in the stories that he writes. So my kind of read of LT's theory of pets that, I don't know, maybe there's something in there that I'm not, that maybe, I don't know, maybe I'm off base, but it kind of seems like it is about like how this person who is shielding themselves from this incredible heartache and uncertainty and pain and everything, how they are spinning that into this very fun tale that he tells. He has a reputation for telling it, and he tells it so well to his coworkers and everything that when they have him recite it at a dinner party or at a little dinner that they're having, it's like it's his thing. And just knowing that it is a complete facade for the brokenness of this man is just so, like you said, it catapults you off a cliff. It is such a, I don't know, it's such a just beautiful characterization in a very morbid and depressing kind of way.
Absolutely. Oh my gosh. Yeah. Perfectly said. Because it's like, this poor guy, LT, and he's trying to play it off as lighthearted, and apparently all of his friends, at least our narrator, who's his friend, thinks that he's just really sunny about it. Like, sometimes, wife's leave, but this is different. This is very different. And the more he tells the story, the more he has to face reality and go home alone to Lucy the cat. And then what's really creepy and is like the narrator, our only sort of guide through this strange little tale, has the facts of like what the police found and has these really jarring facts for the reader. And we're like you can't even breathe because you're like, oh my God, if that. And then King handles it with such a delicate touch where he's like, or maybe this, or maybe that, or maybe none of it at all. And you're like,
it's like, why are you playing with me so much? Yeah.
So much. But this one is totally masterful. And I highly encourage anybody out there to give it a chance because this thing is a stroke of genius. Just looking at tone, looking at narrative decision, arrangement, looking at the way he, like you said, handles a kind of sweet, silly story. The plot is just, the way he handles it at first is lighthearted. And then he stabs you in the heart at the end.
Yeah.
and you're like, what? I didn't sign up for that.
Right.
I was not expecting that. I was enjoying the funny shenanigans of a dog and a cat and a cranky housewife. That's what I signed up for.
Yeah.
This is oh my goodness. No.
This was not on.
May I speak to the manager, please?
Exactly.
I did not ask for this.
Yep.
So masterful, so impressive.
Very much so. And again, I highly, highly recommend everyone check out the live reading that he does in the audiobook, because, I mean, what struck me about that is the way that King just commands the audience, and like especially through, there are a couple of parts in the short story where as he's reading it in the audiobook, he has to stop because everyone's cracking up in the audience, and it's just it's so great. It's so great. I highly recommend that, especially with King as a narrator in audiobook form is a little shaky. I think he has kind of a reputation for not being that great. I like it because I like his voice and everything, but there is something kind of missing, like a performance that's missing in a lot of the audiobooks that he narrates. But I mean, it's just really cool to have Stephen King read you a story.
I know, I'm with you there. I'm 50-50. I'm so with you, where like it is really great to have him, guiding us through this tale. But I also think I'm really spoiled because they get the best of the best in terms of actors to read.
Yes.
And they do phenomenal jobs with his work. And so I'm kind of like, I wish you were somebody else who could give me like 12 voices, because I want the 12 voices.
Right. Yep.
So I'm right there with you. I love it, but at the same time, I'm a little brat about it and kind of wish there was more.
Honestly, just wait until you get to the Wind Through the Keyhole in the Dark Tower saga.
Okay.
Because he narrates that, and I love the guy to death, and I would never question I would never question him or anything, but he pronounces Roland's last name incorrectly, is the best way I can say it.
Oh no.
Yeah, he pronounces it Roland Deschain, and it is so kind of off-putting, and I'm like,
oh my
gosh. I'm like, I know you spent decades writing this story, but I mean, everyone says Deschain. Like it's not Deschain, it's Deschain.
Oh dear, Mr. King.
Yep.
That is the move of uncultured swine, of which you are not.
Yep.
So.
And what's even more weird about that is the fact that he, like, whenever he writes a Dark Tower book, like when he sat down to write the last 3, and when he wrote Wind Through the Keyhole, he would surround himself with the audiobooks, and that's how he got back into the world. And I'm just like, how is there a disconnection there? Like, I really don't get it.
Oh, that's a head scratcher.
Yeah.
Thank you for the heads up on that one, because I think I might do a traditional brick and mortar read, because I don't know if I'll be able to handle that.
Yeah, I wouldn't blame you there. I would not blame you there. So in terms of Everything's Eventual, I don't have the list of all the stories in that collection, and obviously we're going to be talking about another one in the collection here shortly, but where would you rank LT's Theory of Pets kind of in, well, I mean, in your mind, in terms of Stephen King short fiction as a whole, and in the collection of Everything's Eventual?
Oh, gotcha. So with Everything's Eventual, I think my favorite story in this collection, and one that is very high on my all-time favorites list, is The Man in the Black Suit.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
That thing is extraordinary from start to finish. It is so hauntingly good and wonderful. My other top inside this collection, because it scared me to death, like even talking about it, like I hear my voice catch because it scares me so bad.
Yep.
And that is 1408. Like, oh my God.
Yes.
That is like I run out of words, because the part, oh my God, Matt, that stupid phone, it scares me so bad. Like, I am not okay. But yeah, I absolutely love everything about Mike Enslin and 1408 and the Dolphin Hotel and like, oh my God, like it's masterful, it's terrifying, it's creepy, it's confusing. Riding the Bullet, we've chatted about previously.
Yeah.
That one starts white fire hot, love it, love it, love it, and then it fizzles for me, so that one's lower. That is one that I don't feel would crack my top like 10, my top 5, only because the ending left me a little unsatisfying or a little unsatisfied, but it is an enjoyable read, especially the first part. If you like gothic literature, oh my gosh, Riding the Bullet is for you.
Oh yeah.
The Autopsy Room 4 is kind of fun. It's definitely not one of my favorites, but it's fun and charming. It has a cheeky wrap up. Luncheon at the Gotham Cafe. I'm laughing and I'm not even like, yeah, let's just say I'm laughing.
Yeah.
It's over the top. It's bombastic. It's ridiculous. I always recommend that to anybody who's in the service industry.
Oh,
if you are in the service industry, ladies and gentlemen, please read Luncheon at the Gotham Cafe. It is for you. It is for you. And then I really, really did enjoy how King, I don't know if you've noticed this, Matt, but he's like always 10 years ahead of anything cool.
Oh, yeah.
And so I noticed that a lot with the death of Jack Hamilton because King is playing with fantasy history, much like Tarantino did in his films.
Yeah.
And like this whole notion of fantasy history, King is taking John Dillinger, who's like famous outlaw gangster, and sort of giving him this fantastical treatment of fantasy history of Jack Hamilton, who's one of his buddies. He kind of wrote, what if history was written this way? And I thought that was so badass. So I really liked that he's playing with fantasy history a little bit.
Same.
And then there's that feeling, you can only say what it is in French, that is trippy.
Yes.
It's very cool. It's very cool because basically King is taking the notion of deja vu and putting it into words, which just like melts my brain just saying that sentence. Yeah. But it's very cool, very trippy. If you guys kind of, if in your extracurriculars you take anything that relaxes you, whether legal or illegal, this book is, or this story is pretty cool. I really enjoyed it. I didn't know why I enjoyed it. That one I actually really liked having read out loud. That one was trippy for my brain a little bit. So that one was pretty cool.
Yeah, that is such a head trip. It's and he has this running kind of common thread through a lot of his short stories that a lot of them deal with kind of wayward travelers. And I find that really compelling because like in some of his other collections, he has obviously Children of the Corn, and he has they have A Hell of a Band or whatever that is. And then there are several others where it's just travelers that are just kind of waylaid in this out in the boonies, kind of untouched land of a town that's either possessed or haunted or has different things. Rainy Season is another one, but it's just like it is so interesting because, like I said, he is so adept at creating this vision or this overview of kind of middle America and kind of working class America, and infusing it with so much horror and fantastical elements that it's anytime he does that, I'm just like, I kind of want to collect all of these together and just like do an episode diving into like these wayward travelers, middle America kind of stories, because there's so many of them.
Absolutely. Oh my, I couldn't agree with you more. Before I forget, because I have the memory of a goldfish these days. Before I forget, so I don't know if you've read The Bazaar of Bad Dreams.
I have not, but yeah.
Okay, so before you dive into that delicious collection, that one is super kick-ass, there is a story that I loved in there so much, it's like shot to the top because I've yet to finish all of King's short stories, of course, but this one, when I read it, I was like, oh my God, I want to make a film.
Nice.
If I could have a dollar baby, if I could do a Stephen King film, it would be for this one. And the title of the story is Cookie Jar, which is
Okay.
weird.
Sure.
And it was featured in the paperback release of Bizarre Bad Dreams, but it's in the hardcover, the American hardcover as well. I want you to read it, and I would like to hear your thoughts, and we could talk about it. And then someday we're going to make a film, and it's going to be this one.
Definitely.
Because this one is so visual and so cool and very rich story, not very long, but that one... Cookie Jar has shot to my top, like definitely in the top 5. I don't really know why. So I would like to get a second opinion from another well-rounded constant reader like yourself to kind of give me your thoughts and like see what you think, because
Nice.
I don't know, this thing is awesome. But I really, really enjoy Everything's Eventual. I like it quite a bit. The only one I have a little bit of a sticky issue with, of course, is Little Sisters of Illyria.
Right.
But that's only because I just don't know what's going on. But
Right.
maybe in time
Sure.
I will. But when I read it, I was like, dang, this is really long. This is a 50-page novella, and I am lost, and I don't know what these old crone women are. And I want to love it. I want to, but I'm lost. So, but so those are...
That's a tricky one, and I only just recently read that for the first time. Being such a huge Dark Tower fan, I was just like, well, I'm gonna read this when I get to this collection. And so when I got to Everything's Eventual, I finally read Little Sisters of Illyria, and like my immediate thought was, oh, it's Midworld Misery. Like Roland is sick and being tended to by creatures that are not maybe having his best interests at heart. But it's good. I don't think there's really much in terms of tying into the greater saga or anything, but I do really wish that King would write like more short fiction set in the Dark Tower universe. I think that would be really cool.
I am all about it. I just need to make sure that I'm, up to snuff.
Right.
Because, Midworld Misery, I think that's so accurate. That actually helps me quite a bit.
Oh, thank you.
So, yeah, that actually works. But
Nice.
this one's an awesome collection. And I'm so glad that you are doing more short story talk because I think they get overlooked quite a bit for the novels. And
totally.
This is where we get a lot of gold, a lot of good stuff.
Absolutely. And it's interesting to think about how many of his short stories have been mined for adaptations, whether obviously Dollar Babies, which is such a cool program and everything that he does, but also just like feature film adaptations that, like, I mean, there are several that I don't know. My relationship to Stephen King adaptations is a little rocky, just because I kind of feel like that's where a lot of people get their misgivings about King being just a horror writer, because like at least in some of the older adaptations, it's like, oh, this is a scary story. I'm going to take away all the subtext and just focus on the scary stuff and make it a movie. And I see that a little bit in some of the movies that are adapted from short stories. Yeah.
I agree. I always feel like directors and screenplay writers, they just ramp it up to level 11.
Yeah.
Whereas in the story, it was like a 4 and there was all this other beautiful stuff going on.
Yeah.
But they're just like, oh, Stephen King, let's go for it. Let's go
Right.
whole hog with the terror. And you're like, please don't. Like,
Right.
It's not needed. He's already the king of everything. Like, just, you don't need to, just stop.
Yep. So that's LT's theory of pets.
I'm so long-winded. So
Oh, no,
thank
no,
you, dear Matt.
It's great.
Tangential and long-winded.
Yes.
So perfect for podcasting.
Yes. That's my bread and butter, so you're in very good company.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome.
And I've got to say, I forgot to mention this when talking about your TK edit episode, but I to paint you a picture. I was at work at my desk doing my work and everything with my earbuds in. And there was a point in it where you said you compared some of like how you would adapt it to Lost. And
Oh no! I forgot.
It was hilarious because I'm sitting there and then you're like, and I don't remember exactly what you said, but you said taking something like Lost, which I hate that show. And I was just
God.
I just cracked up because it was just so I don't know, it was really fun.
It was very vehement. Yeah, it was really funny because literally the very next episode, I have the wonderful Matt H on
yes.
telling me that Lost is his favorite show, and I was like, gulp. I do hate it, Matt. I will tell you why.
No judgment, but
yeah. So we'll definitely have to have a much bigger deep dive because I really want to know all your thoughts. The only reason I hate it as much as I do is it's mostly just the writer decisions at the very end.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've heard about this, and this will be super quick little tangent, but the writers of the show were interviewed by Entertainment Weekly shortly after the show wrapped. And they were being asked, hey, you left a lot of questions open to the viewers. You really did leave a lot of holes for people spiral off into insanity thinking about them. And the writers said to the journalists, we were kind of just hoping that people would forget about those.
Yeah.
And I was broken inside. I was shattered because I was kind of how dare you do that? What's wrong with you? I feel that, and that's just my everything I've been taught in terms of storytelling and crafting fiction, and especially fiction that is so beloved by viewers. I just felt it was really irresponsible. You have these people that have started fan forums and fan fiction and who have devoted their lives to your show, and you just kind of manipulated them at the end. And so that's how it read, at least. However, it's contextually, I would maybe give it the benefit of the doubt, but I'm still pretty mad about that because I felt like the precious viewers who lifted the show to its high heights didn't get the payout that the writers could have delivered to them. And so I think that's what makes me dislike the show. However, so you'll still be my friend at the end of this. The first couple seasons, I want to say first and second season, pretty incredible. Pretty incredible stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And
you did hear my secret. Did not mean for you to hear that.
No,
but,
it's fine. It's fine.
I'm gonna be. I am honest. I will explain myself, and hopefully, I am not kicked out, and the locks changed when I leave.
Definitely not the case. It's Lost is such an interesting kind of thing, and it's something that I understand that. I understand those criticisms, the hatred toward it. But at the same time, I feel like this may just be me just being an apologist for it, but I feel like I wasn't watching it the same way a lot of people were. Because toward the end, it was everyone on the internet was talking about how oh, there are so many unanswered questions. What about the polar bear? And what about all of this other stuff? And I'm just I just want to see where the characters end up. What happens with the characters? It's that's all I want to know. And where it ends up, not going to spoil it or anything. I mean, I don't think a series finale of a TV show has pulled so much emotion out of me while watching it. So I have to just give it that credit. Yeah, I love it so much.
I'm so glad. And the ending was very touching. It was very touching. And I, too, was moved by it, especially like all of their character journeys. And there's a lot of togetherness at the end without revealing anything. And so it did its job if you were moved by it. It did its job. So I'm very, and if you're a fan, then let that light shine because that's awesome. I think I did love it, but something at the end kind of ripped it out of my chest a little bit. I
totally get that.
And I think it's just because I actually like, this was something that it's like, this doesn't feel ethically right in my heart. So it just didn't sit well. However, I think I applaud you for just suspending the naysay and just letting your heart feel it and letting the art be art. And that's the best thing you could do, is just close out the haters and just say, you know what, this was incredibly moving to me. And it's a subjective experience anyway. The end.
Thank you for that. And yes, in theory, I do kind of just block out the haters, but I mean, I'm very active on Reddit and Twitter, just banging the drum for Lost. Not really.
That's awesome.
Yeah, not really, but I do get like, okay, not protective, but I'm just like, this is, I don't know. But I will say that in the last couple of years, I have been very selfishly kind of secretly glad that Game of Thrones has kind of usurped Lost as like terrible finale writing. So I'm just glad that Lost isn't getting beaten around in pop culture as much, thanks to Game of Thrones and those pesky DB and Weiss writers.
Totally. And this is kind of where I get my inspiration for the edit episodes, because I take the look at these very unsatisfying, little conclusions or parts in the story that just veered off the wrong course. And this is where I kind of put that academic hat on. This is what also helps me feel less angry. Like whenever I do encounter an unsatisfying ending, I just put on that editing hat and it's like, okay, what would I do to fix it? And so I've got some ideas about Lost. I have some ideas about Game of Thrones as well. It actually helps me go to sleep at night. It's a very helpful exercise for anybody who's really mad, rather than scouring the forums and trying to find more angry people like yourself. Sometimes if you sit down and you make some bullet points on what you would change, where it went wrong, what you would add, what you subtract, it's pretty helpful.
Yes.
But yes, I support your Lost fandom. I really do.
Thank you. And yes.
And please forgive me that I spoke negatively. No. I threw stones. I'm sorry.
No forgiveness, no apology necessary. That is your experience, and I would never fault you for that. But I will say that in terms of mentally editing properties to fit your liking, speaking as a Dark Tower fan, after the movie was released, I totally get what you mean. Like, I'm very familiar with that mindset. So yeah.
It helps.
Yep. So, shall we move on to All That You Love Will Be Carried Away?
Oh, let's. Such a gorgeous title.
Yes. And this story, oh my God. Okay, so overview. All That You Love Will Be Carried Away is obviously in Everything's Eventual. It was originally published January 29th, 2001 in the New Yorker magazine. And it tells the story of a traveling salesman who collects different bathroom stall graffiti on the road, and is also contemplating the end of his life. And it is such a beautiful, beautiful short story. So out of all of the short stories, Kim, why did you choose this one to discuss on Tower Junkies?
Oh my goodness. Well, I'm completely echoing that sentiment of yours. This is so beautiful. This
Yeah.
is so beautiful, dear listeners. This is hauntingly there. This is such a strange, it's one of the second or third stories in the Everything's Eventual collection, and everything about this reads like, when I was reading it, I reread it recently for the show, and as I was making my way through, I was like, if my grad school friends could read this and the author's name be a mystery, they would be fully erect for this amazing story. Like, this story reads like Raymond Carver, Cormac McCarthy, John Updike, like, it reads like literary prose. He's taking Middle America, these rest stops, these really sort of random, silly, somewhat, crass, pornographic little snippets of the English language. And he is collecting them in this little notebook, which King actually did in real life, which is so incredible.
I love that so much.
Me too. And he just is treasuring these slices of life in these disgusting road stop abandoned places, and he's finding treasure through language. And it's a quiet story, though the narration is a lot of description, and it's zooming in. It's almost like a magnifying lens of description, where the hotel phone and the bed cover, the nightstand, the lamp, all of this is in hyper focus. And it's slow but beautiful and thought-provoking and meditative. And yet you've got this main character, Alfie Zimmer, who's middle-aged, unhappily married, it sounds like. He is a father, and it is modern day. But he is a salesman to, it sounds like it's a very antiquated work, because I've never heard of the kind of sales work that he does. It's like very 1950s, very like Mad Men. Yeah. Like Mad Men, or something that you would see on Mad Men in terms of what this guy is selling door to door. And sounds very boring and thankless and just empty. And he is contemplating suicide. And yet if you've ever seen the film American Beauty in 1999, that was directed by Sam Mendes and written by Alan Ball. It's kind of like that in terms of one of the characters. His name is Ricky Fitz, and he's been on and off medicine for depression. And it sounds like our main character, Alfie, is in the same boat, because King makes reference to the bottle of pills he no longer takes anymore. And and so there's that. So looking at the fact of this guy's been struggling with mental health for a while, just struggling to keep going day to day, and yet there is profound meaning and beauty in these silly, gross little odd phrases that he finds in little places in America. And it is a mysterious story. If you're not reading it carefully, you'll miss it, because it's sandwiched between these like powerhouse fright fests inside of Everything's Eventual. But I am so glad this story is on your list, because holy crap.
Yes.
This is a 10 out of 10. It's a knockout of like understated gorgeousness.
100%. And that is so beautifully said. It's something that it really struck me, because I mentioned on your podcast, and I have mentioned ad nauseum throughout all of my podcasts, I'm on medicine for antidepressants. And like, that is like, I've never gotten to like that point, thankfully, but it's something that I struggle with when like the pills don't work, or when I run out, and I drag my feet getting them refilled. I'll sense the change in my outlook and everything. And that's something that is so like one of my big things that I to kind of help people understand like how that is from my perspective, is that like there are a few different analogies I make, but like it's basically like for me, I'm on Zoloft, and basically what happens is, imagine your brain is like this wooded area, and there, like, when you have like a negative thought or something that could turn your mood into a downturn and just like kill your day, imagine that as a little fire sparking in the wooded area, and then your brain normally will send firefighters in the form of serotonin to put out the fire. But with depression, the firefighters are sleeping, or there aren't enough of them to go and fight the fire. So then the fire spreads, and all of the negativity and just like just pain and like negative outlook just spreads until it feels like it's out of control and feels like you're not in control. And like, that's something that, you know, I and millions of people wrestle with and everything. But the pills work and everything. So that's great. The pills send the firefighters to the fire. But in context of this story, it's so fascinating to me, the way that he is going through these little like thought exercises where he's basically thinking like, okay, well, yes, I'm definitely going to do this tonight. This is definitely going to be the last entry in my notebook. This is definitely going to be this. But throughout the story, like, there are little like pieces here and there where it's like it's like that fire in his mind isn't as strong, because it reminds him like, oh, I can't let that be the last one in the notebook. People will think I'm crazy. Or, oh, I need to remind my wife about this before I, clock out forever. And it's just like these little like things that distract him from it. And it's just such an interesting, like, peering inside of just of a mind that is troubled and a threat to itself and no one else. And I just found that to be just incredibly just fascinating and resonant, and just it's such a beautiful story. Yeah.
Agree. And like, I'm definitely with you there. I too have the two horsemen, I call them,
yes.
Anxiety and depression. Mm-hmm. I was on medicine for 4 years, mm-hmm. and have been managed to stay off for a couple years, but it's
nice.
Very hard.
Mm-hmm.
I have my bad days, as you know, where mm-hmm. that forest fire is your reality, and your brain is on fire, and it's not fun. And yeah, I think that you have to have been able to have felt the snakes in your brain to appreciate this story. You don't have to, of course, but I think mm-hmm. it resonates with those of us who have. The snakes, the fire, all mm-hmm. the black dog, all the things.
Yep.
When you felt it, you really, really identify with this guy of holding on to the tiniest little thing, especially if you're in the grips of depression. I remember when I had in the past where I could barely wake up. It was one of those like real dark stuff. Mm-hmm. But the thing that would get me out of bed is trying on a new lipstick. Or yeah, I love. I'm very girly. Mm-hmm. The lady under the mask has a lot of makeup on, and I really love girly stuff. And so I would say, all right, you're gonna get up and you're gonna wash your face, and you're gonna see how that lipstick looks with that shirt. Like, it's very silly, and they would be wild colors. Mm-hmm. I spent way too much money on cosmetics that year, but it helped me get out of bed. And nice. I see that with this gentleman, Alfie Zimmer, of mm-hmm. like, there's something magical about his traveling the country, which King has spoke about really loving long drives and mm-hmm. finding magic, and these random little moments that are often crass and silly and stupid, mm-hmm. but sometimes oddly profound, all across these nowhere nothing towns in America. And yeah, it's like whatever he can hold on to stay, and that's what the heart of this story is. And it's like a beautiful echo of a story almost. It's very, very special. So I'm so glad that you're able to do what I see, because that feels pretty awesome. Oh,
absolutely. And a couple of little addendums to my comments. I just want to say that medicine works for me, so it doesn't work for everyone. But also, I would say that you did not spend too much money on cosmetics that year if it helped you, and that's great.
It did, right?
Yeah.
It really did. It really did.
Oh, yeah.
So yeah, so whatever it is that is helping, and yeah, I'm a huge proponent for if the medicine's helping, by all means, then keep it up. Even though it's not 100% all the time.
Right.
And thankfully we artists have each other. So.
Yes. And a writer who has not stopped writing for us to dive in to his work.
Yeah, who has given us decades of gifts.
Yes.
That we get to enjoy and have camaraderie and fellowship with. So it truly is. Yeah, there are never going to be enough thank yous. I'm sure. I can't even imagine the people have been reading King for 40 plus years. That blows my mind.
Yes.
But, you know, I have received so much of from him in 10 years, so I cannot. There are not sufficient thank yous. There's not sufficient gratitude that I could put into words to extend to this man for everything he's given to my life. So, it feels so special. It's such a privilege to be a part of the Constant Reader community, for sure.
Absolutely. 100% agree. And yeah, I don't want to take up too much of your time, by the way. So we can kind of start wrapping it up if you want.
Only if you do. I'm having fun.
Okay.
Let's kick it into fourth gear. No, this has been tremendous. This has been so nice.
Oh yeah, it's such a blast chatting with you and everything. And yeah. So kind of overall, we've already pretty much talked overall about all that you love will be carried away. I
believe it's under 10 pages, right, Matt? It feels it's a short one. It's really little.
It's pretty I almost said sweet, which sort of, but it's pretty brief. Yeah. Let me check because I'm very curious. It is a total of, Wikipedia does not list the amount of pages. No, but it's very brief. And again, it's also one of those endings that I kind of feel like King has a tendency to have some ambiguity in his endings, and I think that in the short story format, he really thrives in the ambiguity of it all. Like these two short stories we talked about tonight, those endings end in ambiguity in such in a way that it never really feels like he just got tired of writing and decided to just end it and just leave it all up to interpretation. It feels like he is leaving us something to think about, and it is such a gift as for us as readers, and a gift that he possesses as a writer to be able to do that in such a short form, and just have so much content packed within it. It's really amazing. How do you feel about his kind of ambiguous endings when they pop up?
I really like them. I do. I know that not a lot of people do, especially because it's a little bit of a challenge because King feeds us so well. Like, we are fed very well with these novels that go on for hundreds of pages. And even King has said, like, readers never want it to end. They just don't. But I feel like we are really adequately nourished the majority of the time. And so when he pulls back and when he kind of allows that open ending and that ambiguity, I really like it. I feel like it's a chance for you to reflect on the journey a bit more. The Colorado Kid, which is a hard case crime title I totally love. There's a lot of ambiguity in that one, and it's tremendous, but it was the reason that so many people disliked it. But I think King was like 10 years ahead of the cool. So,
God, so
with
awesome.
that one, yeah, he was way ahead. He knew exactly how cool it was going to be in a decade, but I actually really enjoy them. It just, I guess, it depends on the overall journey, but I think the shorter it is, the more radical acceptance I have. The more brief the journey. However, if it's like a long one and I've been reading it for 4.5 weeks and it's ambiguous, I might feel a skosh different. It depends but when another constant reader friend of the podcast named Liz R, she uses that phrase radical acceptance when it comes to King. And I think I can approach Lost with more radical acceptance. But it's definitely extremely it's a helpful way of looking at the overall work when you just say, I'm not going to argue, I'm just going to let this go and I'm going to accept it. I often find that when I do that, I get a lot more out of it. But I'm okay. I'm okay with ambiguity. I actually really enjoy it.
Nice. I'm the same way. Well said. And it was when you said when you've been plugging along at it for a few weeks and it's a long one, like in my head I was like, and it's called the Tommy Knockers.
Right?
Yeah.
Oh. Gosh, yeah, like that one, I'm sorry. That's not gonna cut it, Mr. King. That is not acceptable. So like, for example, I felt like with some of the longer works, like if it ended ambiguously, we would have rioted. Like there's no way that would have worked. Like if The Shining ended ambiguously, maybe, but it's like I feel like the longer the journey, the more you need a concrete, definitive closing of the story. Whereas if it's just these little wisps, like these quick bursts of story, I think you're a little bit more inclined to just be like, all right, guy, I'm going to let you do you. I'm going to just keep on trucking. So, but yeah, I do enjoy the mystery. And I love that the two stories we mentioned are mysterious endings.
Yes.
And even though, like, deep down in our hearts, we've kind of probably already gone to the negative, darker ending for both of them.
Yeah.
The fact that King didn't say so, gives that little thin ribbon of light. Like, I don't know.
Yep.
So
anything's possible.
Pretty genius.
Absolutely. And before we go, though, you did have questions before we started recording about Amazon and the Dark Tower. Did you want to talk about that?
Of course.
Okay.
Yes. So I'm a very late guest to this party, but apparently they were making a show or they made episode or they made the first season and then they said JK, not doing that anymore, and people were like Hulk smashing up the place in terms of message boards and there's like a petition to like release the pilot, and so I feel like I don't know what's going on and I'd like to. So.
Sure.
So wise sage, could you enlighten me on what's happening?
Yes. So let me start by just kind of giving you my perspective on it. First of all, like I respect the people petitioning for them to release the pilot, because basically what happened is Amazon was on a tear. I think Jeff Bezos just wanted to buy up as many fantasy properties as he could to throw them at the wall and see what stuck. So Amazon spent like billions just for the rights to the Lord of the Rings so that they can do their Lord of the Rings show. And they're coming out with the Wheel of Time. Oh, wow. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Oh, dang.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. Yeah. Papa Bezos. Yep. Good grief.
Yep. And then they also bought the rights to the Dark Tower, and they commissioned a pilot episode. And from my perspective, like it is the, I don't know if I'm getting the expression right, but twice bitten, once shy or something.
Yeah. Once bitten, twice shy.
Okay, yes. So as a Dark Tower fan who has long wanted an adaptation to come out. I have been bitten several times.
Bless your heart.
Yes. Yeah, like when I was first reading the Dark Tower series, it was like I had found out while reading it, and mind you, this is when Lost was in its final couple of seasons. I had learned that J.J. Abrams and Damon Lindelof and all of them involved with Lost had bought the rights to the Dark Tower series, and they were going to do an adaptation. And then they walked away from it because they're like, I don't want to mess it up. I don't want to mess this up. That it's so important to me. I don't want to mess it up. So like that is just something that I was just like heartbroken over because I love their work with Lost, and it's just yeah. But anyway. So the movie came out, and when they made the movie, the intention or the idea was to make a movie and then have I think this is kind of borrowed from when Ron Howard had the rights to it, because he wanted to do like a trilogy of movies with like a limited series in between each movie's release. So basically like the trilogy of movies would have been the main quest for the tower and everything, and then the limited series would explore Roland's backstory through like Wizard and Glass and like through the flashbacks and the gunslinger and all of that. And like that was ambitious. And in my head, I'm like, you need more than 3 movies for that. And
yeah.
My
gosh.
Yeah. So when
it's got to get the Harry Potter treatment or
yes,
nothing.
Exactly. So when Ron Howard's adaptation kind of fell through the cracks or what have you, Akiva Goldsman was like writing it with him. And so he held on to the rights, I guess, and then he went on to write the movie that we got, which has me question his writing talent in general. But the idea was to kind of do like movie, TV show, movie, TV show, movie, TV show. So I remember that MRC, the studio that distributed or produced the Dark Tower movie, had gotten a green light from Universal to do like a season of television, and like it was a done deal and everything that they were going to do it. And then the movie came out, and it did not perform well at all, and they did not even have confidence to really promote it that much. So that all fell apart. But then apparently the TV aspect of it had a little bit of life. And I guess Amazon was like, okay, let's do a pilot episode. Let's bring on Glenn Mazzara, who Glenn Mazzara is an incredible TV writer. He's an incredible writer. And he wrote for one of my all-time favorite shows. I would probably put this like my number 3 favorite show is The Shield on FX.
Ooh, that's
yes.
solid. That's a solid pick.
Yes. Did you watch The Shield?
I saw I think I saw the first season. It
Okay.
was a little gritty for me.
Very gritty. Yeah.
But then I watched Sons of Anarchy, which was like
Okay.
10 times more gritty.
Yeah.
But a lot of good writing in The Shield.
Oh yeah. Small tangent, and I'm sorry to keep throwing stuff at you, but I've got to say
This is all good.
yeah, the Shield has one of the greatest of any television show that I've ever seen, greatest kind of overarching story from beginning to end. Like if Lost is a maligned and a much maligned and troublesome finale, The Shield is the antithesis of that. Like it is. The finale alone is like one of the greatest hour and a halves of television I've seen, because it closes the story in such an amazing way. It is some of the best writing I've seen on television.
Ooh, I'm so glad to hear that.
Yes.
Now, really quick, is it okay? The Shield versus Breaking Bad, Matt. Go.
That is really tough for me.
It is super tough.
Yes, and I will say Breaking Bad like is kind of
perfect.
transcendent.
I think the
honestly.
word you were looking for is perfect.
Yes, like the only thing that I would say about the end of Breaking Bad in terms of just ending a story is like, the ending was great and it was fantastic, but like Ozymandias, that episode is just like, it's 2 episodes before the finale, and it's like, that's the end of the story. The rest is denouement and cleanup of the storyline, but this is like
great word.
Pivotal. Thank you. So The Shield, though, I've got to say, I've rewatched The Shield more than I've rewatched Breaking Bad.
Okay.
So I think that The Shield holds such a special place in my heart because it was kind of underseen. It was kind of a scruffy little cable show, gritty as hell and everything, but they got their full run and everything. So I kind of lean toward that just because Breaking Bad had such a pop culture moment. But in terms of storytelling through both of them, I mean, I would say I would give a diplomatic answer and say that they're neck and neck. But my heart is with
right
The
on.
Shield. Yeah.
Sure. You definitely make me want to check it out again. So thank you
Nice.
for that.
Yes.
I will put that in the queue, good sir.
Nice. And so anyway, the Dark Tower.
This is quite a soap opera. My
Yes.
goodness gracious.
Talk
What an
about-
ordeal.
It's like this episode is like Tower Junkies version of different seasons, just up and down, highs, like
Yes.
all over the place.
But like, I just feel bad for all the DT fans who had to go through this. My
Oh,
God.
yes. It's
What a
insane.
miserable experience.
Yeah.
Miserable.
Oh yeah. So basically, that's where I was. So they got Glenn Mazzara, who he was one of the writers for The Shield, and he went in and he devoured the Dark Tower series. He on the Kingcast podcast, he was a guest, and he basically outlined his entire vision for the series. This was after Amazon passed on it and everything, and it was dead and wasn't going to go anywhere. So like listening to that interview, I was just like in my soul, I was like, it is so painful that we're not getting this because it is so the right way to do it in a way that I wasn't expecting it. But also just the fact that someone had like a vision for it. Someone had the right vision, even though we're not going to get it because it's gone. It's never going to happen. I'm just glad that someone could have gotten it. So it's a weird balancing act, but they shot the pilot, they gave it to Amazon. Amazon decided not to order it to series, so now the pilot is something that'll never be seen because it wasn't picked up, and a lot of the diehard Dark Tower fans just want to see the pilot. Yeah, it's heartbreaking.
That wounds me so.
Yes,
Gosh.
yes, and it's painful, and like,
Right?
yeah, it's such a shame, but and what makes it even more like a little bit of a dagger in the side, even more so, is the fact that, like, I mean, I don't know if the Dark Tower would have fallen in this particular thing, but like 6 or 7 years ago, Amazon had a pilot season kind of thing where on Amazon Prime they would have, I don't know if it counted toward their decision making at all, but basically like once a year or twice a year they would release the pilot episodes of a bunch of shows that they were working on, like potentially picking up to series. So there would be like 4 or 5 pilot episodes. I know that there was oddly enough, there was a show called Mad Dogs, I think, that was part of that program, which Mad Dogs was actually produced by Sean Ryan, who was the creator of The Shield. So kind of weird there. But anyway, yeah. And Mad Dogs was okay. But it got picked up to series. It ran for 1 season. But before all of that, they had the pilot season where they showed that like you could have access to the pilot episodes of the shows. And then like if you watched it, you could rate it and stuff. And then presumably that would factor into, you know, if they were to order more episodes. But what's painful is that then years later, we get the Dark Tower pilot episode that's in that kind of category that Amazon ordered a pilot, that if they were still doing that, they would have put it up there just for people to watch. And now we're in the position where they don't do that anymore. So we're never going to see it. It's just like a little knife to the side.
Oh, just that quote, never gonna see it. That's heartbreaking.
Yes.
Oh, God.
Yes.
Terrible.
Yep.
Well, I hope that either like Bezos or Musk or somebody just gives somebody a bunch of money to do it, because there's so many fans who are so happy. So
Yes.
I
Same
hope
here.
that we eventually get the proper Dark Tower rendering.
Same here. Yeah, it keeps me up at night.
And this is quite grim, and I don't even want to speak of it in case I tempt fate, but I think the only way it might happen is if we lose our king. And that would be the only way. I think it would be such a surge of fandom and news and all the things, but I retracted immediately because I don't want to put it out into the universe. So it's officially retracted, but that's a theory, potential theory.
Yeah. Hopefully the day never comes that we'll find out whether or not that's true.
But until then, we'll always have the podcasts.
Exactly. We have podcasts. We have,
so many.
The books, everything.
Everything.
Yeah. Yep. All right. Well, I think that will just about do it for this episode of Tower Junkies. Kim, thank you so much for another just absolutely delightful chat, and it's been such a pleasure.
Couldn't agree more, my friend. I've had such a blast. Thank you for having me on. And thank you, listeners, for hopefully enjoying this wild, zany, brainy exploration of all things shenanigans.
Oh, yes.
But I had an absolute blast. You are extraordinary. You are such a delight. Thank you for being host with the most and having me on. And I can't come back. I'm going to invite myself and just come back.
Absolutely. Anytime. Imagine there's a freestanding door on a beach somewhere. That
oh my God.
door is totally open for you at all times. Oh my God.
I'm totally coming in.
Nice.
And I'll bring a lobster roll.
Awesome.
I'll bring some lobster.
I love it. So before we go, just tell people where they can find you online and where they can find your amazing Stephen King podcast, the Year of Underrated Stephen King.
Oh, yes. Thank you. You can locate me at Underrated SK Pod on Twitter and the Instagram. And then you can find me on Apple Podcasts, Google, all of the podcasts, little outlets there. But if you are a constant reader that wants to talk shop with me, feel free to write into the show at underratedsk@gmail.com. I love chatting and typing thoughts to all of you on some of past episodes, novels. I love recommendations. I love to chat Stephen King TV. So I would love to hear from all of you. And please check out The Year of Underrated Stephen King, where this fiction teacher is doing her very best to make her way through the underrated works of King.
Awesome. And next up you have Later. And
I do. Next we're going to be doing Later. That's my farewell to summer book, my pre-Halloween pre-game there, because that little ditty was spooky as hell. Let me tell you, that was whoa.
Oh yeah.
Super loved it. So that'll be coming up soon. And then I would like to, depending on how the next few months go, I gotta make it to the Wastelands. Gotta do it. I really would like to do a installment of The Green Mile as they were released in the snippets, the sort of novella snippets. So I'd like to do a really nice, thorough examination of The Green Mile, because I think that's a really masterful text. So we're gonna head there.
Nice.
And then, hopefully by Thanksgiving, if all goes well, I would either like to crack open Needful Things, or I'm going to do a little bit of Stephen King television talk and explore Mr. Mercedes Season 3.
Oh, interesting. Okay. Nice.
Yeah. I really enjoy the series with Brendan Gleeson as Bill Hodges. So I'm hoping that they did the Finders Keepers adaptation, which is Season 3. I'm excited to see what they did with that. What usually happens, and I will totally go rogue and pick I will absolutely. I'm like, oh yeah. So dear listeners, remember when I said I was going to do all these? Well, we're going to read from a Buick 8 now. Okay. So surprise.
Yep. I think that is kind of like the curse of the Stephen King podcaster. And
totally.
I respect those podcasters who do it in chronological order, like Chat Cemetery. I wish that I could do that, but I am someone who just has these flights of fancy that I'm like, okay, I want to read this now. And for some reason, Tiny is still podcasting with me.
Because, I feel you.
Yeah. Yep.
I mean, shout out to Deanna, because I could not do a chronological, no way, because those Bachman years are bumpy, let me tell you.
Yeah.
He's not my favorite person, and I'm like, no, I need to be able to hop, skip right on out of here, Steve.
Yep.
I cannot. So I'm definitely flights of fancy. I'm right there with you. If my mood is not as sunny as I'd like, well then I can't really go into a creepy one. I gotta cherry pick for my own sanity.
Right. And then you'll get something like LT's Theory of Pets, where it's like, oh, this is very nice. Oh, wait. Oh, shit.
JK. Yeah. Oh, God. What the hell? I hope everybody reads that.
Me too.
Definitely let us know what you think,
absolutely,
listeners, because that one's so cool.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. Well, once again, Kim, thank you so much for both having me on your show and coming on to here. And I can't wait to chat with you again. And obviously, to all the listeners, please go check out The Year of Underrated Stephen King. It is such a great, delightful, and insightful, if I can rhyme there, podcast devoted to King and his underrated works. So thank you so much.
Likewise, thank you, dear sir, and thanks to all of you, and take care.
Yep. You too. And so that's our episode. Thank you guys so much for listening. And every time I end an episode of Tower Junkies, I forget the way that we sign off. So yes. So usually with Tiny, we do a sign off thing, but I'll just say the whole thing so I'm not putting you on the spot. But thank you guys so much for listening. Long days and pleasant nights, and may you have twice the number. Okay. And now, here's a short clip from our Patreon exclusive RSS feed. To hear the full clip and more exclusive Patreon content, go to patreon.com/obsessiveviewer and become a patron at the minimum rate of $1 per month. Thank you and enjoy. That it's just like the places that he goes, not necessarily hell, but in some form or the other, his identity and life in those areas are, disappeared and taken away, either through his actions or through fate or Ka or whatever. So maybe that's something. Maybe I talked myself into appreciating it. I don't know if that's a sycophantic urge of me to appreciate anything Stephen King does, but I don't think that's true. I have a ranking of all the Stephen King books I've read, and there are plenty that are at the bottom of that ranking, so I don't think it's a sycophantic thing. But anyway,
Tower Junkies is edited and produced by Matt Hurt and presented by ObsessiveViewer.com. For a full archive of our episodes, go to TowerJunkiesPod.com/archive. You can also like our Facebook page at Facebook.com/TowerJunkiesPod and follow us on Twitter at TowerJunkiesPod. If you enjoy the show, please take a couple minutes to leave us a rating and a quick review on Apple Podcasts. This is the easiest way to support what we do, and all it costs is just a little bit of your time. If you'd like to donate to the podcast, you can make a PayPal donation at TowerJunkiesPod.com/donate or support us on Patreon for recurring donations and access to commentary tracks and B-roll audio recorded exclusively for patrons at Patreon.com/ObsessiveViewer. Every donation goes toward paying the fees to keep the podcast running and is greatly appreciated. For official Obsessive Viewer merch, including shirts, mugs, phone cases, and more, visit our TeePublic store. You can find a link to the store in the show notes of this episode and at obsessiveviewer.com/donate. Or you can simply search for Obsessive Viewer at teepublic.com. For information about our annual live event showcasing short horror films from local filmmakers, check out shocktoberinirvington.com. And for an archive of all our events, as well as news about potential future events, head over to obsessiveviewer.com/live. For more podcast content, you can find our flagship movie and TV review and discussion show, The Obsessive Viewer Podcast, at obsessiveviewer.com and on Twitter at obsessiveviewer. You can also find Anthology, Matt's solo podcast covering The Twilight Zone, and other classic and contemporary science fiction anthology TV shows at anthologypod.com and OVAnthologyPod on Twitter. Finally, check out The Secular Perspective, Tiny's side project podcast, which tackles current events and life's big questions from the perspective of secular hosts Chad and Amanda at thesecularperspective.com. Music for the podcast is provided with permission from Fingers T on YouTube. Additional bumper music is provided courtesy of As Good As It Gets, which can be found at facebook.com/asgoodasitgetsband. Thank you so much for listening. Long days and pleasant nights.
Kitty!